So welcome to the second class of this drawing class. During this class, I will share my screen and we will do a little exercise on composition. So thumb up if you can see the screen where it says Drawing Class Composition 1. All right, very good. In this little slideshow, I have put on each page, I have put 2 pictures. For each of these pictures, what I want you to do is observe, identify the one that pleases you the most, and try to write in your book why. So put in your book if you prefer 1A or 1B and put why. So I'll give you a couple of minutes, and I have 7 of those groupings to show you. And then afterwards, we'll come back as a group and we'll talk about them. So 30 more seconds for this one. The number 2 is this one. So try to identify which of 2A or 2B pleases you the most and why. The next one. Number 3 is 3A or 3B. Which do you prefer? And then try to identify why and write it down in your book. All right, number 4 is this one. Do you prefer 4A or 4B? Moving on to number 5. Do you prefer 5A or 5B? And why is that? Okay, ready for the next one. Do you prefer 6A or 6B? And why? The last one is number 7, 7A or 7B. Which do you prefer? And why? And now we're gonna have a little discussion. So, and I'm gonna ask you what you thought was, is it 1A or 1B? I'm gonna ask you, and I'm gonna ask like a specific person for each of them. So this way, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I'm just, I'm trying to create a little bit of a discussion. So we'll start with this one. So on this one, Michelle, what would you say is the most pleasing for you?
I originally put down 1A because I thought it was a little sharper, but now I'm wondering about the distance of the picture. I don't know if I like maybe the more depth to it.
Well, look at the line in the background, the line this line here between the wall and the table, and look at where it's positioned compared to the overall height.
It's halfway.
It's halfway. And if we were to paint this, there would be all of this foreground area that doesn't have anything interesting in it. So then on 1B, this one, it's still very close to middle, but it's more like almost like 2/3 down. And there's no area in the foreground that doesn't have anything interesting in it. So this is why number 1B is the one that has the best composition. I'm not saying it's a great composition, but little things like that are key elements to think of when you're composing your drawing, or even a painting if you're painting. All right. Anyone has any questions or comments on this first pair? Moving on to the second pair. So Susan, would you like to tell us, do you prefer 2A or 2B?
I wrote down that I liked 2A better. And like Michelle, though, now I'm looking at him again. But the reasons I wrote down 2A, I felt it was brighter, maybe because it has more white, probably. I feel that it's closer to me, a viewer, and I can see it. You know, I can see the elements in the composition, and the proportion just seems better to me of the salt shaker with the cup. So 2A, I'm going to stick with 2A. I like 2A.
Okay. Anybody else has anything else to add or feels different?
Yeah, I vote for, this is Kevin, I vote for 2A also, and it has to do with the overlap of the salt shaker with the mug.
Meaning it's better to have a little overlap like this than have them separate?
Yeah, I just like the overlap better than like the two edges touching. It just,
Yes.
it feels more natural.
Right. So you are both correct. This on 2B here, the salt shaker is right next to the mug. They're like kissing right here. So having two objects like that in any kind of composition, whether it's you know, in a landscape or on a portrait, in a portrait or on a still life, it's always more pleasing to the eye to have a little bit of an overlap like this, like we see on 2A, rather than have the two objects right next to each other. It also creates a better unity like this to have an overlap like we see in 2A. It doesn't mean that all objects have to overlap, but if they're going to be separate, like in 2B, they should be further apart. And this would give a chance to create some nice negative space between the objects. So the right answer was 2A. You were correct, Susan, as well as Kevin. And both reasons were good. Number 3, we're going to go to Heather. Heather, would you like to tell us which of 3A or 3B you prefer? And you need to unmute yourself first.
I like 3B better because I thought that it seemed like it was better centered. And
Can you increase your volume?
oh gosh, I don't know.
Or put your, do you have a microphone on your headset? Now you're muted now. You need to unmute yourself again.
Okay.
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Okay. So I like 2B better because they seemed better centered, and the other thing was that I felt that the color of the background was better set off in 2B, the red of the background was better set off against the lemon than
Right.
in 2A. They just seemed to blend together more. It was a better made for a more of a contrast.
Yeah, in 3B. Yeah, the contrast, having the lemon in front of the red wall is a better contrast than having the lemon in front of the yellow wall.
Yes.
Yes, I agree. And also, it's still nice to have some yellow in the picture, in the background, to respond to the yellow that is in the foreground. It's always nice to repeat similar colors. Anyone has any other comments or questions about 3?
I picked the same one, 3B, because for the same reason.
Yes.
The red caused like the mug and the lemon to kind of pop out, and it just was more interesting.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Very good. So let's move on to number 4. This is a trickier one. So let's see. Someone who hasn't spoken yet. Julie, Julie, you haven't spoken yet. Would you
No,
like
I
to
haven't.
tell us?
I did think this was a hard one.
It is.
because I like seascapes.
Yeah.
That's what the painting is. However, I think compositionally, it doesn't read right. So I went with the plain darker one.
Right, number 4A.
Yeah.
And anyone else has any other comments on this?
I thought that 4B was just, it was almost like something that came out of my phone camera accidentally. That's what it felt versus a composition. So I
Well,
like 4A.
It was done on purpose.
I know.
Well, and let me tell you what I wanted to demonstrate here. So 4A is the correct answer, meaning it's the stronger composition. Although the background is brown, it does respond to this little brown leaves that we see here in the saucer. So it's in terms of color, still harmonious. On the 4B, this little K, or I can't remember the name of this thing, that it's a boardwalk that that is in the water. It actually brings the viewer outside of the picture over here instead of bringing the viewer back into the center of interest, which is the mug and the saucer. The other thing is the line in the background. See, it's pretty much in the middle, whereas on 4A, it's a little bit above the middle. It's more 2/3 in the back for the table, 1/3 for the background.
So Claire, the line, the cup though, all right, oh no, I see. All right, the line in the brown one is higher than the saucer, whereas the line in the blue one on the right, 4B, is sort of skimming the saucer in the back.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That's so subtle though, my goodness, there's a lot to remember here.
Well, if you look here, you can see the table.
Yeah, you can see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But overall, it's just that this here brings the viewer almost out of the picture. So
Okay.
this is the element that's not good, and also the line here. Anyway, but this here. So
So
for
if that
A,
was solid blue, if the K wasn't there, or the P or whatever it is, what would you say about that?
I would say it's still number 4A because the line here is pretty much it pretty much sections it in half.
Okay.
Half is the wall, half is the table. It's better to be 1/3, 2/3, or 2/3, 1/3.
Okay, thanks.
So it's 4A. Number 5. So let's see, Kevin, you haven't spoken the first. So how about if you tell us which one you prefer, 5A or 5B?
I actually prefer 5A because when I first looked at 5B, I was thinking, what's that drink behind there? Because it looked like a drink with a straw in it. And then in 5A, it's actually a reflection in the background. And I'm thinking, you know, I could just paint that out. I don't have to draw that in. So I was
you
really
prefer 5A?
conflicted in terms of what I would like. I just don't want a plastic straw, number one. But I want a better composition. So one, I was thinking, okay, I want to be really lazy and draw 5A, but I think 5B is more interesting. So I'll just have to okay, now I have to realize that that's salt and not some, throwaway drink from the 7-Eleven or whatever.
Anyone else has any other comments? Or
Well, I was just going to say that because I've taken watercolor classes, and the instructor always said it's better to have a negative number of objects in a drawing or a painting, like 3 or 5, or, as opposed to an even number of objects. So that's what I remembered. So that's why I picked 5A.
5A.
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else has any other answers?
Doesn't 5A have two objects, or are you counting the saucer and cup separate?
I'm counting them separate.
Okay.
Interesting. I was thinking the same rule. Two objects aren't so great.
Yes. See, because,
Saw the cup and saucer as one object.
okay.
Yeah. Well, so in terms of composition, so this straw that you see here in the background, Kevin, is actually the reflection of this. This is a vase, and the background is it's covered with plastic, so that's why it reflects back here. And in terms of this 5A, so the rule of having an odd number of elements in still life, it's true. It's usually more pleasing to the eye. And in terms of counting the saucer and the mug, for me, those two are one element because it's a grouping, it goes together. So therefore, if we count the number of elements and we count the saucer and the mug together, in 5A we have then two elements. The saucer and mug together is one, and the vase here is two. And whereas in 5B we would have the vase, the vase, the salt shaker, and then the grouping of the mug with the saucer. So that would be three. But rules are made to be broken sometimes. So if we count this as four, then why would 5B be the better choice? This is, you want to add something, Julie?
Yeah, well, I want to answer that question. I think 5B still takes it because the eye goes on a little journey up 4 different heights. First the saucer, then the cup, then the salt, then the top of the vase. Whereas on the other side, my eye is kind of jumping more, like not knowing really where to go.
That's exactly right. And that's what I was going to say. Here on the 5B, the eye travels really well through the different elements. Whereas on 5A, the eye gets lost in this big empty space right here. That's created by the negative space of, out the frame and the objects. So this is why 5B would be considered the better option. And if we count the saucer and the mug separate, then we're breaking the rules and we're saying that 4 objects is better than 3 in this case, but sometimes some of the rules need to be broken. This is your artist license. When you're breaking the rules, you're using your artist license. All right, number 6. So Janet, would you like to have the first bid at number 6?
Sure. I had a hard time with this one. I did pick 6B, and the reason why I did was because I thought the vase on the left was a more interesting object than the salt shaker on the left of the 6A. I just thought it was a more interesting object. So that's why I picked 6B. But I thought they were both very interesting, and they both did different levels.
Yeah, in terms of composition,
Okay.
I mean, I know that you prefer that vase, and of course it's a much prettier vase than having that salt shaker.
Okay.
But in terms of composition, it's still 6B is your choice, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
But I thought they were both interesting, so it was hard for me to pick.
Okay. Well, someone else has a different answer, or is this Kevin saying yes? You want to go ahead, Kevin? Unmute yourself and tell us your thoughts.
I'm not talking too much. Okay, we'll go for it. I think the 3 levels in 6A are better, and having that one object that is shorter than the horizon line kind of is the kicker for me. Yes, the other Erlenmeyer flask or whatever vase is slightly more interesting, but they're just too much alike, and it's in the shadow caused by the martini glass.
Mhm.
So I just like 6A better. It's
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to say that 6A is actually, what's happening in 6A is the eye travels from the salt shaker to this vase to the martini glass. And then right here in this space, the eye can rest. Because it created some kind of a negative space. See this lit plate, this lit triangle here? And the eye can rest here and travel back to the center of interest, which is around here where, you know, the color on the martini glass is and the rim of the vase on the left. Whereas here on 6B, this space is not there. There's not a whole lot of space to rest the eye. So it becomes a little bit too busy. So I would say 6A would be a better composition. I'm not saying this would be a grand composition to put in a museum one day, but in terms of the object that is to the right of the martini glass, a shorter, smaller object will allow for this space between the object and the martini glass to a place to rest the eye.
Could I ask you something?
Yes, Julie?
Do you think the salt shaker would be better if it wasn't so close to that line? Like maybe just another 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch back from it?
Right, right. And this is a good point. See right here, the top of the salt shaker is almost kissing this line. And that would be something I talked about in the very first or second slide. So it would be best if the salt shaker was pushed down a little bit so it would not be kissing. And the same thing here, see it's almost kissing the foot of the martini glass. So it would be best if it were separate or if it were overlap. All right, any questions on 6A or 6B? Okay, we're moving to 7A or B. And anybody hasn't talked yet that I didn't point to so far? Barbara, you haven't been here. We're just trying to identify of the two choices, which choice would you say is a composition that is more pleasing to the eye? Would you like to tell us for this number 7? You're muted. Okay, you're unmuted now.
Okay. I think 7B with a little bit more foreground in front of it.
So you would prefer 7B?
Yeah.
And
but not quite as much as that. I'd like it like a third back.
Well, you don't have any choices. You have, the two choices are 7A or 7B.
Yeah, but you're an artist. You can make your own.
That's true. You can use your artist license. But let's say you had a choice between 7A and B.
I'd still, to me, it's more pleasing to have the foreground in front of it.
Okay. Anybody else has any other comments on it or want to say something?
I agree. I like B better.
You like B better, Susan?
Yeah, it feels like more of a story there somehow.
How about you, Julie?
No, I don't like B. I don't like that big unknown story that I have to. What happened? Where's the rest of the dishes?
Well, and actually this 7B here, this whole area here, if you were to paint or even draw it, then this would be almost like a dead area that would be stealing the show from the actual objects that are on the table. So using 7A, now what would happen is this background line where the table meets the background or the wall would not be so much right in the middle of the overall height. So it would be more like 3/4 down. And now the objects on the table would become your center of interest rather than this large dead area here in the back, in the foreground.
Hmm.
So 7A would be definitely a better composition. I'm not saying, like I said before, it's a composition that would be so grand that I would like to see this in a museum. But just comparing these two, 7A would be a better composition.
Because Claire, well, I picked 7B, and I just thought, see the folds at the bottom part of the
This,
of 7B, you know, the cloth hanging down.
yes.
I thought you could maybe do something a little bit, you know, to shade the folds and make it somewhat interesting.
Yes. So this whole section, if you decide and say, well, this is a fold and now this hangs down, now you have to actually make up all of this, because see, if you look at the tone here, it's exactly the same tone as on the table. So it's the same surface here. So if you were to say, well, this is a fold, it hangs down, now you have to make up the tone and the colors for all of this and create those folds. And it almost, the picture almost becomes about this.
Okay.
And now you have two competing elements. You would have this whole fold and foreground that would be competing for the three elements on the table.
Okay.
So it's always better to decide, so is it about what the picture is about? And in this case, it would be a little bit too much of a competition.
Okay.
But you know what? I thought this was the easy one. And in my class this afternoon, we had the same discussion. Think about how it's being composed on your page. So if you have a big page like this, try not to put your horizon right in the middle. So 2/3 down, 1/3 down, or 2/3 down is a good idea. Or maybe sometimes 3/4 down. I mean, the way that you are seeing this is a little lower than the way that I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it higher. So 2/3 is a good idea. So having a line that is straight is a good idea. We practice those lines in other classes. So I'm just going to put that here. All right, so you can go ahead. I'm not going to talk too much. I'm just going to do my drawing, and you guys can do yours. And your homework will be to finish this drawing. Some of you have been sharing what you have done for homework, and I like seeing what you do for homework, and I'm always happy to do a little critique for you guys. If you have any questions, you can always ask me. Need an eraser always. Is always helpful. All right, Kevin, are you taking notes? Can't hear you. I will post on my website, on the page where I post all the link to the recordings. I will post the slideshow that we reviewed in class today in PDF format. It's just too big to send in an email. So if you want to go and look at it again, it will have all the answers in there with the explanation.
That was helpful, actually. You know, that was a very helpful